The alien princess saved the human, then shocked everyone with her choice. The warning lights blinked red, alarms screaming through the cockpit. Every instinct he had screamed at him to brace for impact, but there was no time for hesitation. The storm outside lashed against the shuttle's hull, twisting it as if the planet itself were trying to throw them away. He had been on routine exploration duty, surveying the uncharted sectors of the Zyphoran system, when sensors had gone haywire. One moment he had been cruising in calm space, and the next, a magnetic storm had pulled him off course. Now his shuttle was falling fast, spinning in a dance of fire and metal. The controls were barely responding. He fought against the turbulence, trying to steady the craft, but the planet's gravity pulled him relentlessly downward. Ethan's mind raced. He thought of his family back on Earth, the messages they would receive when they learned he was lost. He cursed himself for volunteering for this mission, for trusting the old navigation systems. But then, a strange thought came over him, a strange calm in the chaos. Maybe, he thought, this is what it feels like to be truly alive. With a violent jolt, the shuttle crashed into a clearing surrounded by enormous trees with luminous leaves. The impact threw Ethan across the cockpit, smashing his shoulder against the control panel. Pain exploded through his body, and everything went black. When he awoke, the world was quiet, almost eerily so. He tried to move, but his body refused to cooperate. The pain in his shoulder was sharp, and he could feel blood trickling down his face. The shuttle's hull was twisted and smoking. Broken panels scattered around him like debris from a fallen monument. Panic clawed at him, but then he noticed something that made him stop mid-breath. A figure was moving toward him. At first, he thought it was a hallucination brought on by shock and pain. The figure was tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered faintly under the strange light of the Zyphoran sky. Her eyes glowed softly, and her hair seemed to float as if underwater. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen on Earth. She stepped closer, her movements deliberate, not threatening. "Are you alive?" she asked, her voice melodic but firm. Ethan tried to speak, but only a groan escaped. She knelt beside him, examining his injuries with glowing hands that emitted warmth. "You are badly hurt." "You must come with me," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. He tried to resist, fear and confusion warring within him, but his body wouldn't obey. The last thing he saw before passing out again was her gentle, yet determined expression. When he woke again, he was in a room that was both alien and beautiful. The walls shimmered faintly, covered in patterns that seemed alive. Light floated in the air without any source, illuminating the room in soft, calming tones. He could move a little now, but his body was still weak. He sat up slowly and noticed the princess sitting nearby, watching him carefully. "My name is Liara," she said. "I am the princess of Zyphora. You are safe here for now." "Princess?" Ethan croaked, his voice hoarse. "You saved me." "Yes," Liara replied simply. "You should not have come to my world uninvited. Your people are unpredictable, but I do not let that decide your fate. You are hurt and I will heal you." Ethan stared at her, disbelief and awe mixing together. He had expected hostile aliens, perhaps a planet full of dangerous creatures, but not this. He had expected fear, maybe even hostility. Instead, he found grace and kindness. Over the next few days, Liara tended to him. She used advanced Zyphoran technology to heal his wounds, and she moved with a calm efficiency that fascinated him. She never forced him to speak, never demanded answers. Yet as they spent time together, Ethan learned about Zyphora, its floating cities, its history, and the way its people valued harmony and intellect above all else. Liara, in turn, watched Ethan closely. Humans were unlike Zyphorans, messy, impulsive, and unpredictable, yet undeniably brave. There was something about him that intrigued her, something that made her question the strict traditions she had been raised to follow. Not everyone in the palace agreed with Liara's decision to hide a human in their midst. The royal council met behind closed doors, voices tense and full of concern. "This human is a threat," one council member said. "He could bring war to Zyphora. We cannot ignore what he represents." Another council member, older and more cautious, replied, "The princess has acted out of compassion, but the risk remains. He is one of their kind and they are unpredictable. Our world cannot afford to be careless." Liara listened from the doorway, her jaw tight. She understood their fears, yet she could not ignore the truth she had seen. Humans were capable of courage and intelligence. She could not let prejudice dictate the fate of one who had done no harm. As days passed, Ethan grew stronger. He began to explore the palace grounds, though always under Liara's watchful eye. He marveled at the beauty of Zyphora, the way the plants seemed to hum with energy, the floating gardens that drifted above the city, and the air that smelled faintly of minerals and flowers. Everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of a civilization far beyond humanity's current capabilities, yet with a warmth and creativity that was entirely unique. Liara and Ethan began to communicate more freely, sharing stories of their worlds. Ethan spoke of Earth, of the blue oceans, the mountains, the endless human capacity to dream and create. Liara spoke of Zyphora, of its complex society, and the burden of responsibility that weighed on her as a princess. One evening, as they sat in the palace gardens, Ethan asked, "Why did you save me? Your people fear humans. You could have just left me to die." Liara looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Because I saw something in you," she said softly. "Bravery, yes, but something else. Compassion, curiosity. These are qualities my people admire, even if we do not always understand them. I could not stand by and do nothing." Ethan felt a swell of gratitude and something deeper, a strange warmth he could not name. He realized that in this alien world, among these strange, luminous people, he had found an unexpected ally, perhaps even a friend. However, danger was never far away. Rumors of a human on Zyphora began to spread through the palace staff and eventually reached some of the council members. Whispers filled the corridors, voices tinged with fear and anger. "A human among us. How long before he betrays us?" one whispered. "He cannot be trusted," another added. Liara knew the risk. The council might demand Ethan be handed over or worse, experimented on. She also knew that if the citizens learned of his presence, chaos could follow. She could not let that happen, not if she wanted to protect him. One night as they walked along the floating terraces, Ethan asked, "Do you think they'll ever understand? Or will I always be a threat to your people?" Liara paused, looking out at the glowing city below. "Understanding takes time. Trust takes longer. But one person can make a difference. One act of courage, one act of compassion can change many hearts. That is why I cannot let them harm you, not while I can stop it." Ethan nodded, feeling both hope and fear. He knew he owed his life to her, but he also understood that staying in Zyphora was dangerous. Every moment could bring discovery, and discovery could bring judgment. In the following days, they trained together. Liara taught Ethan how to navigate Zyphora's strange terrain, how to move safely among its creatures, and how to use basic technology for survival. Ethan taught her about Earth's simple innovations, things Zyphorans considered primitive, but which fascinated them nonetheless. Through shared experiences, their bond grew. What began as necessity turned into friendship, and something deeper began to form, though neither spoke of it openly. There was laughter, moments of quiet reflection, and a shared understanding that they were both far from home but had found solace in one another's company. But the world outside the palace remained tense. The council's scrutiny grew sharper. Spies moved quietly through the halls, observing Ethan, noting his every move. Liara could sense their presence even before they appeared. She would confront them, her calm authority leaving no room for argument, but she also knew that the situation could escalate beyond her control. One evening, as a storm brewed over the city, Ethan looked at her with a question in his eyes. Do you ever wonder if you've made a mistake? Saving me? Liara shook her head. No. Sometimes the hardest choices are also the right ones. I cannot turn my back on what I know is just. You may be human, but your heart, it is not so different from ours. Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. He had faced storms in space, survived crashes, and wandered alien lands, but never had he felt such a profound connection, such trust. He realized that in this alien world, he had found someone willing to see him not as a threat, but as a person. And so, despite the looming danger and the uncertain future, Ethan began to believe in possibilities he had never considered, possibilities that involved not only survival, but hope, friendship, and perhaps even something more. Liara had saved his life, but in doing so, she had changed him forever. Little did they know, their bond would soon be tested in ways neither could imagine, and their choices would ripple through Zyphora in ways that would shock both humans and aliens alike. Days passed in the floating palace of Zyphora, but the outside world was not silent. Whispers of a human hidden among the royal family spread like wildfire through the city. Rumors reached the ears of the council, and the palace staff began to watch Ethan closely. Each movement, each glance was noted, and suspicion grew like a dark cloud over the city. Ethan, though recovering well from his injuries, sensed the tension around him. Every door he passed seemed to conceal watchful eyes, and every corridor echoed with whispers that made him uneasy. He often looked to Liara for reassurance, and she would smile softly, her glowing eyes giving him courage. "Do not worry," she said once as they walked among the floating gardens. "They do not understand yet, but they will if we are careful." Liara's decision to hide him was not without consequence. Her advisors were restless. Her older sibling, Prince Viral, believed Ethan's presence threatened the stability of Zyphora. "Sister, you risk everything for a human," Viral said one morning as Liara observed the palace city from the high terraces. "They cannot be trusted. One wrong move and our people will suffer." Liara's jaw tightened. "You do not see what I see." Courage, intelligence, loyalty, he has these qualities, Viral. You judge him by what he is, not by what he does. Viral's expression hardened. "And if he betrays us, if your compassion destroys us?" Liara did not answer immediately. She knew the council's fear was not baseless, but she had also seen Ethan's heart. She had seen him risk his own safety to explore the palace grounds carefully, always mindful of the creatures that roamed the outskirts. He had learned quickly, adapted to the alien environment, and shown ingenuity in ways even Zyphorans found impressive. Ethan, for his part, was learning more than survival. Liara taught him about Zyphora's culture, the complex systems of governance, and the delicate balance the planet maintained with its environment. Floating gardens were not only aesthetic marvels, they purified the air, collected energy from the sun, and regulated the city's weather systems. Each creature and plant had a purpose, and every citizen knew their role in the intricate dance of life. He marveled at the alien technology, simple yet efficient, blending seamlessly with nature. For a human, used to industrial cities and artificial landscapes, Zyphora was a revelation. The soft hum of energy that ran through the city, the way the plants glowed at night, and the floating islands that drifted above the ground, it was a world of wonder. One afternoon, Liara took him to the lower terraces, closer to the wild edges of the city. Massive creatures with translucent skin moved among the forests, feeding on glowing plants. Birds with wings that refracted light flew in synchronized patterns, creating waves of color across the sky. Ethan was amazed. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Liara smiled. "It is. But it is also dangerous. The wilds are not forgiving. That is why you must always remain vigilant." Ethan nodded. He had already seen evidence of the planet's dangers. Predatory creatures had approached the palace's outer limits during his early exploration. Liara had intervened, using technology that could incapacitate the beasts without harming them. She had saved his life more than once, and each time he felt a mixture of gratitude and awe. As they walked, Liara asked, "Do you think your people can learn from us? Or do you believe all humans are the same?" Ethan thought for a moment. "I think humans can be anything, good, bad, brave, selfish. But I also think we have something you might admire, the will to survive, the will to help others even when it is dangerous. I see that in your people too, Liara. Maybe that is why we understand each other in a way." Liara's eyes softened. "Perhaps. That is what I see in you, Ethan. That is why I cannot let them harm you." Despite their growing friendship, danger continued to loom. One night, Ethan overheard voices outside his quarters. Spies had discovered his presence. They were discussing his movements, wondering if he had come to steal technology or spy on the princess. Ethan's heart pounded as he realized the stakes. If the council learned that he had moved freely through the palace, his life could be in danger. He rushed to Liara, explaining what he had heard. "They know I am here. They are watching me. What do we do?" Liara's face was calm, but her mind raced. "We must be careful. You cannot be seen outside without purpose. We will create a schedule, routines that seem normal. You will learn, observe, and act only when necessary. That is the way we protect you." Over the next few days, they trained. Ethan learned to move through Zyphora silently, to blend with the surroundings, and to use simple defensive tools. Liara taught him how to read the subtle signs of the planet's creatures, the flicker of a tail, the rustle of leaves, the shift of shadows, that indicated danger. One afternoon, Ethan accidentally startled a small, floating predator near the city's edge. The creature hissed, glowing red eyes fixed on him. Panic surged through him, but before he could react, Liara stepped in, her hand glowing with energy that immobilized the creature without harming it. Ethan stared in awe. You saved me again." Liara's expression was gentle. "And I will continue to do so as long as I can. But you must learn to trust yourself as well. Courage alone will not save you. Knowledge and preparation will." As the days turned into weeks, the palace grew tense. Council members debated Ethan's presence more openly. Some feared that the human could bring the attention of other planets, beings who might see Zyphora as weak or vulnerable. Others, however, argued that the princess's choice reflected a new kind of leadership, one guided by morality and empathy rather than strict tradition. Liara listened carefully, knowing that one wrong step could destroy the delicate balance she maintained. She also knew that Ethan's presence was changing her perspective. She had always felt the weight of expectation, of duty to tradition, but here was someone who challenged her, not with words of rebellion, but by simply existing, by showing bravery and humanity. One evening, as a storm brewed above the floating city, Ethan asked, "Do you ever worry that I might cause trouble, that your people might not forgive you?" Liara looked at the glowing clouds above. "I worry. But I also believe that the right choices must be made, even when they are difficult. You have shown me things I had not considered before. That is why I cannot abandon you." The storm raged through the palace, lightning splitting the sky and wind shaking the floating terraces. Ethan felt a thrill of fear and excitement. He had survived a shuttle crash, navigated an alien world and faced unknown creatures, but the storm reminded him of the constant danger. Yet he also felt safe beside Liara, knowing she would protect him. As they prepared to leave the terraces, alarms blared across the city. A rival faction of Zyphora, seeking to exploit any perceived weakness, had attacked the outer defense posts. Ethan watched in horror as creatures and machines clashed on the edge of the floating city. Liara's face hardened. "This is why your presence here is dangerous," she said, "but also why we must be prepared." Without hesitation, she led Ethan through secret passages, showing him how the city defended itself. Ethan, despite his fear, marveled at the coordination and intelligence of the defenders. Each move was precise, each response calculated. The human survival instincts combined with Zyphorin's strategy created a surprising harmony. When the battle subsided, Liara and Ethan returned to the palace. The city was safe, but the council's suspicion had grown. Ethan realized that their lives could no longer be quiet. The outside world, the council, and rival factions would continue to challenge them. Each day would require courage, intelligence, and careful planning. Yet, despite the danger, Ethan felt a sense of purpose. He had not only survived but had begun to understand a world far beyond his own. He had found a friend, a guide, and perhaps something more in Princess Liara. Liara, for her part, knew that the choices ahead would define her leadership and her life. Saving Ethan had been an act of compassion, but it had also set in motion events that could reshape Zyphora. She did not regret her decision, but she understood the stakes. Every day, she would have to defend not just the human she had saved, but also the ideals that guided her: courage, empathy, and the belief that one life could change many. And so, the days on Zyphora continued, filled with training, learning, and quiet moments of connection. Ethan and Liara grew closer, their bond strengthened by shared danger and mutual respect. The palace remained a place of tension, yet also of discovery, a symbol of a world where understanding and courage could defy fear and prejudice. Little did they know, the events unfolding on Zyphora would soon force them into decisions that would test their trust, their courage, and the limits of loyalty. The human's presence was no longer a secret, and the consequences of Liara's choice were only beginning to unfold. The palace was quiet in the early hours, but the tension was palpable. Word had spread further than Liara and Ethan had hoped. The council had demanded that the human be presented publicly. Today, Ethan would stand before not only the council but the citizens of Zyphora, and his fate would hang in the balance. Ethan could barely sleep the night before. He had spent weeks learning about Zyphora's customs, its dangers, and its people, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. He looked at Liara, who stood by his side in the morning light, her glowing eyes steady and calm. "Are you ready?" she asked. Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't know if anyone will accept me," he admitted. "I'm human, strange, different. What if they hate me?" Liara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You have shown courage, intelligence, and heart. That is what matters. Let them see who you truly are, not who they fear you to be." The chamber where the trial would take place was vast and imposing. Citizens of Zyphora, officials, and palace guards filled the floating platforms, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. The council sat in elevated seats, their eyes sharp and assessing. Every gaze was fixed on the human standing before them, and Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Liara led him forward. "This human, Ethan Cole, is under my protection," she announced. "He has done nothing to harm Zyphora. He is brave, he is intelligent, and he has earned our trust." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nodded in cautious agreement, but many faces were skeptical. One council member stood. "Princess Liara," he said, his voice sharp, "while your compassion is noted, you cannot ignore the risks. This human's presence endangers the city. How can we trust him?" Ethan stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly, but his voice was firm. "I came to your planet by accident," he said. "I have no desire to harm you. I have only sought to survive, to learn, and to help where I could. I am not your enemy." Another murmur ran through the citizens. Liara observed them carefully. Some were impressed by Ethan's courage and honesty, while others were still wary. She knew that actions spoke louder than words, and soon Ethan would have to prove himself. As if on cue, alarms blared. A distant sound of battle reached the city. Scouts had reported a small invasion party approaching Zyphora's outer borders. These were not ordinary raiders. They were a rival alien faction that had observed the palace for weeks, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The council froze, and the citizens gasped. Liara's eyes narrowed. "This is your chance," she whispered to Ethan. Show them who you are. Ethan nodded, adrenaline surging through him. He and Liara moved to the observation deck where the battle could be seen. The invaders' ships were sleek and fast, dropping pods filled with small but aggressive creatures onto the outskirts of the floating city. The palace defenses responded immediately, energy barriers flaring to life and defensive drones intercepting the attackers. Liara turned to Ethan. We need to coordinate the defenders. You understand human strategy, yes. You can help us manage this fight. Ethan swallowed. I think I can. Using what he had learned about Zyphora's defenses and combining it with human tactical thinking, Ethan began giving suggestions. He observed patterns in the invaders' movements and predicted their next strikes. Guards and defenders hesitated at first but then followed his guidance. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The invaders, unprepared for such coordinated defense, faltered. Ethan directed drones to create diversions, suggested energy barrier adjustments, and even identified weak points in their attack formations. With Liara supporting him, they pushed the enemy back, driving them away from the palace. The citizens watched in awe. Humans were considered fragile, unpredictable, and untrustworthy by many, but here was one who had risked his life and shown exceptional courage and intelligence. When the final invader ship fled, a stunned silence filled the chamber. Then slowly the citizens began to clap, some cheering loudly. Liara's face shone with pride, but her expression also reflected the gravity of the moment. "Do you see now?" she asked Ethan quietly. "Courage and action speak louder than fear." Ethan nodded, exhausted but exhilarated. He had faced death and uncertainty, and yet he had proven himself to a world that had doubted him. But the council was not so easily swayed. Some members still muttered about risks and unpredictability. After the battle, Liara called a private council meeting. "This human has shown his value," she said firmly. "He acted with courage, intelligence, and selflessness. We cannot deny the truth." Viral, her older sibling, was not convinced. "One act does not erase the danger, Liara." "What if other humans come? What if they are not as honorable?" Liara met his gaze steadily. "Then we face them when the time comes, but we do not condemn one for the actions of others. Ethan is not a threat. He is an ally." The council continued to debate, but the citizens' reaction could not be ignored. Ethan had become more than a visitor. He had become a symbol that courage and morality could bridge even the greatest differences. Over the next few days, Ethan continued to assist in defending Zyphora. He worked closely with Liara, learning more about the technology and strategy of her people. Each challenge strengthened their bond, and Ethan's respect for Zyphora's complexity and beauty grew deeper. Yet not all threats came from the outside. Some factions within the palace still sought to challenge Liara's decisions. Spies moved quietly, attempting to undermine Ethan's credibility, spreading rumors of deception and hidden motives. Liara confronted them when she could, but the seeds of doubt had already been planted. One night, as Ethan and Liara walked through the palace gardens, he spoke quietly. "I know I've changed things here," he said. "I never wanted trouble. I just wanted to survive and maybe learn from you." Liara smiled faintly. "You have changed things, yes, but change is not always bad. You have shown us that fear can be overcome by courage. That trust can be earned even across worlds. That is something my people must learn." Ethan felt a surge of warmth. In all his travels, in all the dangers he had faced, he had never felt so deeply that his actions mattered. Here, on this strange world, he was making a difference, but challenges were not finished. A messenger arrived at the palace with urgent news. Another alien fleet had been detected on Zyphora's borders. This fleet was larger and more organized, clearly intent on conquest. Panic rippled through the city, and the council argued heatedly over the best course of action. Liara turned to Ethan. "This is another test," she said. "We must show them that courage and strategy matter more than fear and prejudice. Are you ready?" Ethan nodded. Yes, let's do it. The next battle was more intense. Ethan coordinated with Zyphora's defenders, analyzing the enemy's tactics and finding weaknesses. He guided the placement of defensive drones, suggested ambush points, and even proposed counterattacks. Liara fought alongside him, her energy hands glowing as she repelled creatures that had breached the outer defenses. The citizens watched in awe again. Humans were still considered fragile by many, but Ethan's leadership and bravery earned him respect. Even some of the council members who had doubted him now nodded quietly, acknowledging his contributions. By the end of the battle, Zyphora was safe. The enemy fleet retreated, their ambitions thwarted by the combined courage of the princess and the human. The citizens erupted in celebration, cheering not only for the victory but for the unusual alliance that had made it possible. Liara turned to Ethan, her expression soft. "You have done more than survive. You have inspired. You have proven that even a single life can change the course of events. That is why I trust you." Ethan felt a swell of emotion. He had come to Zyphora by accident, expecting danger and perhaps hostility. Instead, he had found a friend, a mentor, and a partner in courage. He realized that his presence here had not only changed him, but had also begun to change the hearts of a world that had once feared him. The council, although still wary, began to discuss the human's place in Zyphora more openly. The debate was no longer solely about risk. It was about the potential for alliance, for understanding, and for the value of courage over prejudice. Ethan and Liara spent the evening in quiet reflection. The battles were over, but the challenges were far from finished. New threats would emerge, and the citizens would take time to fully accept him. Yet, for the first time, Ethan felt that he belonged somewhere, that he could make a difference, and that trust, once earned, could overcome even the deepest fear. Liara looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "The next steps will be harder, but we will face them together. That is the promise I make to you, Ethan Cole." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Together, they had survived storms, battle, and fear. Together, they would face whatever came next. And together, they were beginning to show Zyphora that courage, loyalty, and compassion could bridge even the greatest divides. The world was watching, and soon, everyone would have to confront the choices Liara and Ethan had made, the choices that could reshape the future of Zyphora and humanity alike. The city of Zyphora glimmered under the twin moons, floating above the planet's dense forests like a jewel suspended in the sky. Despite the victories in recent battles, tension still lingered in the palace. The council had grown cautious. Citizens whispered about the human who had proven his bravery, and Liara felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. Ethan stood beside her on the high terrace, looking out at the city below. The wind carried a faint electric hum from the floating gardens, and the trees shimmered faintly in the moonlight. "Do you ever get used to this?" he asked quietly. "All the pressure, all the responsibility." Liara shook her head, her glowing hair swaying with the breeze. "Never. Each day brings new challenges, but it is not only responsibility, it is also choices. Every decision we make shapes the future. You, Ethan, have been part of many of my choices, but now the next choice is the most important." Ethan turned to her, curiosity mixed with concern. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "The council has requested a formal decision. They want to determine whether you, a human, may remain on Zyphora under my protection, or whether you must be sent away. They also want to know if my choice as princess aligns with tradition or defies it." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had survived crashes, storms, and battles, but this, standing before the council and all of Zyphora, was different. The stakes were no longer his survival alone. They included trust, diplomacy, and the moral weight of leadership. The chamber where the decision would be announced was packed. Citizens stood on floating platforms, eager to witness the princess's verdict. Council members sat rigidly in their seats, some frowning, some skeptical, others intrigued. The air was electric with anticipation. Liara stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. Ethan followed, unsure of how to act. He had no formal status here, no power, only courage, intelligence, and the bond he had formed with Liara. She raised her hand, and silence fell over the chamber. "Citizens of Zyphora," she began, her voice clear and firm, "you have seen this human, Ethan Cole, live among us. You have seen his courage, his loyalty, and his intelligence. You have seen him fight not for conquest, but for life, for survival, and for the protection of our people." Some members of the crowd murmured in approval, while others remained tense. Liara continued, "I understand that his presence challenges tradition. I understand that many fear what they do not understand. But leadership is not only about following rules. Leadership is about doing what is right. Today, I choose to do what is right." Ethan's heart pounded as the crowd listened, some leaning forward, some whispering among themselves. Liara paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. Then she made the choice that would shock everyone. "This human, Ethan Cole, shall remain on Zyphora," she declared. "Not as a guest, not as a curiosity, but as an ally. He has earned our trust and has proven that bravery and compassion know no species. I stand by him, and I will not abandon him, even if it means defying tradition." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some citizens were stunned, their expressions reflecting disbelief. Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few murmured accusations, but others looked on with admiration. Viral's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Ethan feared the council might challenge her openly. Liara raised her hand again. "Let this be clear. Courage, loyalty, and heart define a person, not their origin. We are judged by what we do, not by what we are." "Zyphora will not shrink from compassion or justice, and neither will I," the chamber erupted. Citizens cheered, some clapping loudly, others raising voices in approval. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. He had not only survived, he had been accepted. More than that, he had inspired an entire world to reconsider their prejudices. But the challenges were not over. The announcement drew the attention of distant worlds. Other factions, who had been watching Zyphora's responses to human presence, began to take notice. Word would spread, and with it, curiosity and potentially envy or hostility. Liara turned to Ethan privately after the ceremony. "You have changed Zyphora," she said softly, "and perhaps one day your people will learn from us as well. But for now, your safety depends on more than courage. You must be wise, vigilant, and always aware of the eyes that watch us." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity. "I will. I promise." The days that followed were filled with both celebration and preparation. Ethan trained with Zyphoran defenders, learning advanced strategies and technologies. He learned the patterns of the floating gardens, the behaviors of native creatures, and the subtle signals of danger in the city. Liara guided him, but she also allowed him to take initiative, to make decisions, and to prove his worth continually. The citizens, gradually, began to accept him. Children approached him curiously, fascinated by a human who had become part of their world. Merchants and craftsmen observed his courage and intelligence, slowly shifting from fear to respect. Even some council members, previously skeptical, began to acknowledge his contributions quietly. Yet Ethan's presence remained a symbol of change, and change always brings challenges. One morning, a messenger arrived with news. A rival planet had dispatched envoys to discuss potential conflict. They had noticed Zyphora's new alliance with a human and viewed it as a possible threat to their influence. Liara studied the reports carefully. "This is the first real test of what we have begun," she said. "The galaxy will watch how we respond. We must show that courage, diplomacy, and trust are stronger than fear and prejudice." Ethan felt a mixture of excitement and fear. He had faced storms, battles, and danger, but now the challenge was political and moral, not just physical. The safety of Zyphora, and perhaps the future of human-Ziphoran relations, depended on careful judgment and unwavering courage. Over the following weeks, Liara and Ethan worked together to prepare Zyphora for the envoy's arrival. They strategized defenses, developed communication protocols, and ensured that the citizens felt secure. Ethan's insights into human diplomacy and problem-solving provided valuable perspective, complementing Zyphora's advanced technology and long history of governance. When the envoys arrived, the tension was palpable. The delegation from the rival planet was skilled and intimidating, their expressions cold and assessing. They demanded explanations, questioning why Zyphora had allied with a human and whether the princess's decision endangered her world. Liara spoke with calm authority. Ethan Cole has proven himself not only through courage but through loyalty and intelligence. He is no threat to Zyphora. Instead, he is an example of what trust and understanding can achieve. The envoys exchanged glances, surprised by her confidence. Ethan stepped forward, explaining his actions, his intentions, and his respect for Zyphoran culture. He spoke with honesty, humility, and courage, impressing even the most skeptical members of the delegation. By the end of the discussion, Zyphora had not only defended their choice, but had also demonstrated the power of cross-species trust and collaboration. The envoys departed, leaving a message of cautious respect. Zyphora had proven that courage and moral integrity could influence even distant worlds. In the days that followed, the city celebrated quietly. Citizens admired Ethan's bravery and the princess's wisdom. Liara and Ethan spent time together in the floating gardens, reflecting on everything they had endured. "You've done more than survive here," Liara said. "You've inspired people. You've changed hearts." Ethan smiled faintly. "I couldn't have done it without you. You saved my life more than once, and you've shown me a world I never could have imagined." Liara looked at him, her expression soft and thoughtful. "Sometimes the right choice is also the hardest. I could have followed tradition, sent you away, and avoided scrutiny. But courage, honesty, and compassion, they matter more than tradition. That is what I wanted to show." Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of belonging. "I'm glad you made that choice," he said quietly. Liara's eyes glowed softly. "And now we face the future together. Humans and Zyphorans, united not by convenience, but by trust and courage. That is how we will survive and thrive." The city below seemed to shimmer with hope. Citizens walked through the floating terraces with renewed optimism. The floating gardens glowed brighter, reflecting the light of two moons. Even the palace felt alive, as if acknowledging that change, when guided by morality and courage, could bring strength. Liara and Ethan knew their journey was far from over. More challenges awaited, other worlds, skeptical leaders, and dangers beyond the horizon. But for the first time, they felt truly prepared. They had faced the unknown together, overcome fear, and built a bridge between worlds. Ethan took Liara's hand, feeling the warmth and energy that seemed to radiate from her. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it together." Liara nodded. "Together," she echoed, a soft smile forming on her lips. And so, on a planet once distant and mysterious, a human and an alien princess had changed the course of history. Their courage, trust, and compassion became a symbol for all of Zyphora and beyond. They had proven that choice, guided by morality and heart, could overcome fear and tradition. The story of Ethan Cole and Princess Liara spread across the stars. A human who had crashed on an alien world, a princess who defied tradition for what was right, and a bond that would inspire generations. Zyphora had been transformed, not by war, not by conquest, but by the bravery of one human and the wisdom of one princess who chose courage and heart over fear and conformity. And in that moment, as the twin moons reflected on the floating city, it was clear that the future held endless possibilities for humanity, for Zyphora, and for the unity of worlds that once seemed impossibly far apart. The alien princess saved the human, then shocked everyone with her choice.